Hello, and welcome to the Social Power Lab podcast, brought to you by Vokes Leadership Group.
Hello. I actually didn't know I did that, which is kind of funny that you pointed it out now.
No, you do. You do.
Okay.
I listened for my solo episode.
I realized I said it like right when I just came on camera with you to talk to you. I tend to say hello twice for some reason. But regardless, it is everyone's favorite 1.3% Scottish boy, Adrian Deschamps II, coming at you live straight from the Windsor, Ontario. Here with Dr. Ted Vokes. I wasn't here last week, and I was feeling it. I was feeling the grief.
There was this great feeling of emptiness that I had. I put on a brave face and tried to be you, but I don't think I fooled anybody.
Baby, but you're still on my lonely mind. Yeah, was that going through your
That was
head?
beautiful.
Oh.
Yeah, no, everything was going through my head. Nothing was coming out of it, but
Yeah. So, I mean, what else is new? Personality and power is taking up a lot of brain space, and it's just becoming more and more relevant every day. And it's so funny because, as I was saying before about personality type, when I first learned it, I literally I can't unsee it now that I know it. Right. So like every day of life, no matter what I'm doing, I could be like literally cooking, or I can be, in the car wash or something. I'm still seeing personality traits at play. It's just like it's so funny.
power.
And power. It's and it's so funny how the personality traits really express power. And yeah, and then the brain regions that go with that, right? So psychology is honestly, I don't know why it's so fragmented. I found, when I was in my undergrad, it was kind of like people were going either the social psychology route, or the clinical route, or the neuropsychology route. It was like these three streams, and I'm just like, I want all three. It's what makes sense to me, at least.
No, and it's how our intuitive brains make sense of the world too. When we spoke about that a couple episodes ago, the integration of all things, and indeed, we as theoreticians in our team have, and one day we will roll out for anybody interested, the grand unification theory of psychology, which somehow we've inadvertently developed over the last decade. With all of the stuff we're talking about in this particular podcast integrated within it, and it sort of accounts for how social life and the individual injected into the social context actually works, the mechanics of it, if you will. So one day we'll talk about what Amir, or sorry, no, what Adrian has dubbed the TIZO. But I just what's that?
I think it was called that before.
Well, no, you just read the acronym, but the theory of individual and social organizing, and you just abbreviated to TIZO.
Oh, you know what? I thought it was already abbreviated to TIZO. That just shows how you.
I just never said TIZO. That's all. Then you did, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's what it's called, I guess.
Some TIZO.
There you go. So yeah, but we digress again, as we are inclined to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going to finish off personality with the JP dimension and how those differences in the brain and sort of relate to social power, and then we're going to bring in some really new psychology that is the space between personality and culture. This big, huge gap. Oh, there you go. I like the. I hope the viewers, sorry, the listeners at home could hear the applause.
Sure
that
how well the sound effects come through, but when
we have sound effects.
I just want to. That was so quiet. The light bulb. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to enhance the applause because it's important. Yeah, so we're going to talk about this thing that fills that gap But why don't you kick us off, Adrian, on your thoughts on the differences between those who have it. We better define J versus P too before we do that, and then talk about how they relate to power somewhat differently.
Yeah, so J and P is a really fun dimension. So just a quick refresher for everybody. There's 4 dimensions of one's personality type. So mine, for example, is ENFP. So extrovert, intuitive, feeling. And the last letter that we're talking about right now is the P and the J, which is, for me, it's perceiving. For Ted, it's judging. And that doesn't mean he's judgmental. It means that, you know, he's more likely to prejudge situations before he enters them, whereas I'm more likely to kind of perceive situations and take them in as they're happening, right? So, yeah, the J and P dimension, it's really like how a person likes to navigate the world. It it really influences behavior in these really niche ways. It's actually really funny. I can think about like the only thing that my girlfriend and I tend to disagree on is like the J and P stuff. Like just because
Yep.
she's an ENFJ, I'm an ENFP, right? So like there will be things that I just don't prioritize, right? Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to like, you know, fold the laundry, let's say, because it's I don't know, it's going in a basket and then I'm gonna have it there, right? But she'd be one to like want to fold it all, and which both ways are fine. Even though a lot of the Jays listening to this right now might think I'm wild by not folding my laundry, but I mean and yeah, just different things. So in a nutshell, Jays, which stands for judging, they tend to prefer to organize. They prefer structure. They prefer to plan ahead. They're the people who really navigate the world with schedules, with checklists, with game plans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Itineraries, these kinds of things. And the
And we don't love it when things don't go according to those plans that we so
yes,
meticulously try to make. Yeah.
yes, and that's one thing. And then with P's, the perceiving types, we don't plan too much. We kind of feel suffocated by structure at times. We like to go with the flow, and we like to kind of let things happen as they will. We're the
And
type
adapt.
and
And
adapt,
adapt to it,
right?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
adapt to it. Like we're P's are the type of people that kind of say, "Yeah, we'll figure it out," right? It's
And the Jays say, "Yeah, we'll figure it out now.
now what
Figure it out now, not as we go,
and
before we go." Yeah.
it's most noticeable on certain things, like if you go on a trip, right? So like my partner and I, we did the east coast of Canada, and it was so
All
funny.
of it, every bit of it,
Every
right?
bit of it,
You
yeah.
just,
Like,
yeah,
I drove
the whole
across
thing.
3 provinces in 8 days. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. Like she had everything planned, like every single thing. And I was kind of just like, yeah, like we'll see if we get there. Like let's just, let's just enjoy what we see. Let's enjoy, if we make it to PEI, we make it to PEI. And then she's like, no, we're going to PEI and we're going on this day and we're going on this ferry to go, right? Like it was, and it was a great trip. It was a great trip because of her ability to pre-plan everything, but also my ability to adapt as we needed, right? So
Yeah.
we complement each other in that way. But a lot of teams really struggle with these JP differences, right? Things like I don't know, cooking, for example, right? Like you can have a J type who's like, okay, we're gonna use like this much meat, this much potatoes, this much vegetables. We're gonna cook it in these pots, and then you'll have the P helping with cooking and be like, you know what, we should make some gravy out of this. And the next thing you know, they're grabbing another pot and they're making gravy and they're getting in the way. And it's like, no, we weren't supposed to do that. Like it's just,
Yeah.
a lot of kind of there can be some impulsiveness, but it's with intention, right? Like it's
Yeah. Well, you'll make the meal even better with gravy.
yeah,
And then the Jays, we can get stuck and be like, but we didn't plan to make gravy, you know? And now we were going to use that for something else. And now you're taking it and you're using it for gravy.
yeah,
And yeah, so I'm making Jay sound very rigid, and some are. There's sort of a
some
continuum, right? If you're SJ, you tend to be more J, and NJ, like I am, we like the order and structure, and we would like to be more ordered and structured. But the N is the big picture, and we struggle to have that same degree of order in our lives. So to SJs, we NJs can look kind of P, but then you put a real P next to us, and we look J. So that's
hmm
that whole continuum of all personality dimensions, right? It's not black or white, 0 or 1. It's
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, it's a really weird example. Not many people would resonate with this, but musicians will resonate with this.
Hmm.
J types are like classical musicians.
Right.
So they have the piece in front of them. Every staff has the exact note, the key signature, the time signature, and it's right there. It's all structured. You've assigned your page flipper, right? And P's are like jazz musicians, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
playing in the key of
Totally.
this, and they don't play the same thing twice. They know that they're playing like a certain pattern, right?
Hmm.
ABAA was like a common jazz pattern. And they just know what key they're playing in, and then they're all going to take solos at different times and make them up on the spot. And right. And it's just about going with the flow, right? The flow is the key signature and the time signature, and they just go off it. And that's what's really funny with jazz music and classical music is like their classical is like like so structured that
Yeah.
and there's like institutions in the world that like test people and certify people on how perfectly they can play a classical piece of music. And then there's also just a culture of people that are like, hey, grab a bass and let's play
Let's
you know
let's do variations
play a
on
jig in B minor, like it's right.
yeah, right. Or they'll take a classical piece and they'll go, well, let's do some variations on the Brandenburg Concerto, and it'll have that Brandenburg-ish feel to it, but it'll be all over and around it, but not on it,
Hmm.
which, right? And I've even heard some jazz musicians who as I was listening to them being interviewed and whatnot, they're very, very P. Not all, of course, but no black and whites like that. But saying, there's no jazz music that's recorded,
Yeah.
right? Like it's recorded all
Almost.
the time.
Yeah.
But then they say, if it's a recording, it's not jazz music. Now those would be like that some of the diehard purists, but it's like
Yeah.
jazz music has to be adapted in the moment and once and for only that time, and then if you're going to do that song again, you're going to do it differently.
Yeah.
So recording seems to be sort of a, but anyway, I'm clearly in the J camp here.
Yeah. J camp. I'm in the P camp. And it's so funny because being a P, like when I didn't know personality type theory, like I always just thought that I like sucked at a lot of things that were necessary for life, right? Like I remember as a kid, my teacher would just be like so frustrated with me because I was the kid that had a bunch of like loose sheets of paper in my desk, right? Like I wouldn't actually just put them in the duotang or the binder. Like I would just be everywhere. And then like they were just like, oh my God, like why is this kid not, you know, putting all the loose papers? But like I always kind of knew where everything was, right? And I was able to get it out and I was able to, do what I had to do. And it can often like I had a friend make fun of me one time. Another music reference, but guitar players out there, you know what I'm talking about when I say that guitar picks just like they fall into the void and they vanish forever. Like it's
You
just
told a story in one of the earlier episodes about your guitar pick underneath your nightstand
oh,
table,
did I tell this story
right?
already? Okay.
And yeah, no, well, it's a great example of, okay, I'll say it. It's a great example of penis, okay?
Oh my
As opposed
lord,
to Janus, right?
the Janus.
It's a bad joke. But it has come up in training sessions. We actually had somebody who said, "Oh my God, now I understand. I finally understand. I'm J, my husband's P." And people, she was just astonished, and she said, "I never got it, but now I finally understand my husband's penis." Yeah, yeah.
Oh my lord.
I guess we're no longer a family show, everybody.
No, I don't think we ever were,
No, I
honestly.
don't think we
Although my
were.
mom's listening to it now, but
Oh,
I mean,
oh dear.
she she's heard me say the most astounding things, so nothing's gonna surprise her at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. No,
But
we've all heard you.
yeah, so J and P. So yeah, essentially, J pre-planning, structured, organized. Let's make a plan. Let's follow the plan. And then P's are let's go with the flow. Let's see what happens. If a change comes up, cool. We'll adapt. We'll change course. Yeah,
Whatever will be, will be. Yeah,
whatever will be. And when it comes to power, that is exactly how they implement power, right? If you have a J and a P going into a meeting, right? Let's say there's like some executive meeting or there's like, you know, the J might be kind of planning how they're going to communicate with who they're presenting to or who they're bargaining with or whatever the case may be. And they're essentially planning, their points, what they're going to say. And in these different communications, they could be displaying legitimate power. They could be displaying resource power. They could be displaying expert power, referent power, right? And they can kind of, and again, they might not have the exact language for this, but it's what
no,
they're commonly doing, right? Like if you
yeah,
want to assert your position in the corporate hierarchy, you're using legitimate power, right? If you want to, share knowledge and expertise that you gained, you are using expert power.
expert power. Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, and yeah, they're often kind of planning what they're going to say, stuff like that. A P would just kind of go in and be like, yeah, we'll feel it out and we'll see what the vibe is, and we'll choose from there, right? Now the P person is still going to use power.
absolutely.
They're just not really going to plan how they use it, right?
No,
And I do this a lot. Like when I used to teach college classes, like every classroom's different, right? Like you shape the culture of the classroom as much as you can, but and
it's shaped by the students too.
it's shaped by the
I've
students
never.
too, right? So there was some classes I had. It was really funny. The elective classes I had, referent power was what I used the most, right? Because I'd go in and I would just like feel it out. People were interested. People were asking questions, paying attention, not interrupting, like but everybody was having a good time, right? So, okay, referent power was my friend, right? And then, I had another class where I had a student and I really liked this kid. He was really unique. He just liked to kind of challenge things. So he was an NT, so intuitive thinking, right? Like we talked about in
Right.
previous episodes.
Yeah.
And I would say something, and then he would kind of be like, "Well, like, how can you prove that? Like, how can you, right?" Or I gave an assignment on, you would find a conspiracy theory and you would psychologically like disprove it, essentially, right? Like what critical thinking components
Nice.
are missing. And he was, he took it upon himself. He's like, "Sir, what if I want to prove the conspiracy theory to you?" And I'm like, use the same psychology. Tell me why my thinking would be wrong, right? And like that was how he was, right? So in that class, I found that I was using more expert power because I had to keep this person as well as his friends, because they all kind of had this kind of cool curiosity with them, right? And like they like the intellectual kind of hamster wheel, so to speak. Like they really wanted to exercise their brains. So I was using more expert power, right? I was just more of a thing. And to the point where when I was teaching them personality type and temperament, they thought I was a T. They labeled me as ENTP.
Wow.
I was like, wow, I've never been called a T before, so that's interesting. And then I had a course where the students were not the most behaved. They
Oh, I remember this one. Man,
yeah,
these
and
discipline problems.
lots
Yeah.
of interrupting, lots of talking over other people kind of thing, right? And I unfortunately I had to use um threat-based legitimate power, right? Like I had to use my power as a professor and say, "Hey, get out of my classroom right now." I actually this is like the one time I ever did this. I kicked out an entire row of students, like literally 7 of them. I'm like, all 7 of you get up and get out. And they thought I was joking at first because it was very dystonic of me, right? Ego dystonic. And, you know, I said on the first day, I said, everybody in this room is going to respect each other. And if you're not okay with that and you don't abide by that, I will kindly and politely walk you out the door, right? That's kind of what I say. And I meant it. Like the
Yeah.
group of students were not being respectful, so I kindly escorted them out of, and I said to them, I'm like, I'm not joking, get up and leave, right? I will see you next week, we'll try again. And that was like one of the rare times where I had to use more legitimate power, right? I had to be a bit more of a hard ass than I wanted to be.
Yeah. And in a coercion expression of it, and a threat
Yeah,
based.
right.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, when we say threat-based coercion, like it almost sounds like aggressive, right? There's
Yeah,
nothing
it's not.
unethical about that. I
Nope.
we just simply have to assert the power we have sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Whether we're teachers or we're leaders or we're parents, right? Like it just
Yeah.
depends on the situation. Yeah, so that's often how I often, yeah, like as a P, I find I don't really plan how I'm going to use power. I often feed off of the other person, right? Like I often kind of wait to see how they communicate and how they express. And then I kind of choose my power dynamics from there, right? And referent power I tend to use a lot because it's just so comfortable to me. But yeah, there's
And that's the F coming forward. T's do absolutely, they use referent power, but F's we tend to lean into, like we talked
yeah,
about in
and I think
previous episode.
like even it's funny like with Ted, right? Like we'll have, I don't know, I'll make up a scenario. Like we'll have some meeting with some, I don't know, we're doing like a conflict resolution type thing, right? And we'll
Yep.
we'll go in and like it's funny, like Ted will kind of give me like a short briefing of like, okay, listen, so like we're gonna go in, we're just gonna observe, we're gonna, maybe bring up this point. Like you can tell he's already kind of planning how
Hmm.
he's gonna use power, right? But then it's also cool because I kind of feel like despite you telling me that, like I'm kind of just gonna do whatever. Like I'll
And
follow your lead. Like I'm not gonna
and
rebel, but
no, no, but
I'm gonna
way more often than not, it turns out to be exactly the right way to go. Yeah.
yeah, like it's more like we follow the plan until the plan reaches its end, basically, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of a thing that happens a lot. Is like you plan for something and then yeah, like it happens, but then other variables get introduced and then you got to adapt, right? And yeah, like and again, everybody can be adaptable, right? It's just for P's being adaptable is like pretty easy. For J's, it's still possible. It just takes more effort, right? It's uncomfortable. It's like, ugh, I really don't want to do this, but we have to, right? Whereas a P, having a plan is kind of like, ah, all right, I guess I'll follow the plan. Right? Like, but capable of both. And I've worked so many jobs where I would say, Vox Leadership Group is probably the only job where I haven't had to be more of a J type.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's partly to do with what we do,
yeah,
because we have to adapt to whatever, if we're training, if we're consulting, if we're mediating, facilitating, we get a lot of data beforehand in most cases, but then, you know, uh, the people we're working with get a vote in the plan too, right? And so anyway, I took over for there. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Yeah.
That's a perfect
So
point.
we're pretty key in that we have to adapt to, you know, what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, I
And
remember years and years ago, early in my career, I was doing type theory training with a small nonprofit organization, and they supported people living with particular form of terminal disease, and so people it was a slow progression. So they would work with people for sometimes many years, and then eventually they would probably succumb to the disease. And I was coming to do type theory. I knew what they did, but I got there and started off in according to the plan. I had my opening, and we did all the introductions and all the rest, and I couldn't make sense of why I couldn't get any kind of engagement or traction. And it was just like it felt like I'm pulling teeth or something like that. I couldn't engage, couldn't reach them. And probably 20 minutes in, somebody said, I'm really sorry, Ted. We lost 3 clients last night. And I was like, oh gosh, and they're all, independent of one another. They just happened to succumb to the illness at that time. And I said, okay, we're not going to do type theory today. And there were social workers there, and I invited them to uh, sort of lead a process of you know sense making, and we went for probably half the morning, just letting them talk about their grief, talk about how you know this was also at a time where there was some experimental treatments coming out, and there was more hope that fewer and fewer clients would die, and then 3 all at once, right? And so we adapted, and that, in psychology, you need to be prepared to that. I've learned to be more P from that. Um, I learned that too in the military, because yeah, you make all kinds of plans in the military, but and then you realize that a plan is just a common point from which to deviate. But we all have a common point, so I got
mm,
more comfortable there, and then in psychology, absolutely.
moral of the story is that Ted learned to embrace his penis.
Oh, you were just waiting,
I was
waiting for
waiting.
that
You just
opportunity.
lined
You
me
were,
up for that one.
oh, it's
I'm
turned
sorry.
around and
I'm
bit
sorry.
me, bit
Terrible.
me.
And we call
Yeah.
ourselves professionals. Jesus. We'll be back right after this break. We're going to dive more into some more psychology theory. And yeah, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I don't know if we'll be back. I'm not sure now. I'm not sure.
This week's spotlight is on culture reviews and social power analyses. Organizations don't just have a culture, they actively produce one day after day. Here at Voke's Leadership Group, our culture reviews and social power analyses go beyond engagement scores and map just how power, trust, and psychological safety actually functions in your system. The result is a practical roadmap to transform culture, not just rebrand it. Thank you, and back to today's episode.
Welcome back to Voke's Leadership Group, where we are getting looser and looser with our jokes.
And our morals, I think.
And yeah, no, I think, I think that's what podcasting is all about, though, is just like, well, it's a very P process, actually, now that I think about it.
That's it. That's a good point.
How the podcast started is actually kind of funny. I kind of like started the recording process. Like, we talked about doing a podcast for a while, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we met about it a few times, and talked about what we would do and stuff like that. And yeah, I think one day I was kind of like, you know what? Let's just press record. Like, let's just press record. We had like a general idea of what we wanted to talk about. And then we did it, and we're like, that felt good. Let's try it again next week. And then that's how we kind of found our groove, right?
Yeah.
Is by everybody kind of shifting to P. I mean, Amir's a P anyway, so it's easy for him, right?
Yeah. Here I am between two penises. That's
Yeah. The extent of me and Amir making a plan is like, do you want to try this? Yeah, sure, okay. Like that's the full extent of like when we're doing
that's yeah.
interviews. It's like, do you want to talk this time? Okay, sure.
Yep.
Right. It's one of us talks a lot, the other one takes notes a lot. It just depends on the role, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's kind of cool. But then there's certain things that require a lot of J out of me, for example, right? Like culture audits and data analysis and these types of things. Like I don't get to be like, well, I want to do it like this. It's like, no, there's a pretty standard way to to do a culture audit, right?
Generate reliable data. There's absolutely there is, yeah. And
So there's like
protocols and yeah.
P things, there's J things. Some roles really incorporate a good amount of both, right? Like first responders is like it's J in the sense that like you have your equipment, you have your procedures, you have your your policies and you have your training, but then it's also P in the fact that like you're running into a burning building and you're working with what you got, right? Like it's
Yeah.
you got to improvise based on the environment, based on the factors, based on the people, based on the like arrival time. Like there's just all these factors that cause you to have to adapt, right? So
And the fire does not follow your plan.
no, no, it doesn't.
Yeah. It's gonna do what it's gonna do.
So
Yeah. That's a good
yeah,
example.
and yeah, with power again, it's not so much that J types and P types gravitate towards certain forms of power. It's that they kind of execute them differently. They execute them in a more pre-planned way versus a more kind of improvised way, right? And that's why sometimes, actually, this is a great example. Sometimes when I'm doing a workshop or something, my jokes just don't land because I'm basically improvising with referent power. I'm like, all right, now seems like a good time to make a joke, and I line one up in my head.
Yeah.
And sometimes like the audience is too young or something, and they don't understand the reference, or like it could be anything, right? Or it's just a stupid joke. It just isn't funny, right? I think I'm hilarious, but like there's times where like people, friends of mine are like, all right, Adrian, simmer down. Yeah,
So
so
take a time out.
yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch on with J and P?
It's a powerful difference between people. It can lead to conflict, but it can also lead to, as all of the differences can, to some really incredible collaborative efforts, right?
Mm.
And so, I find when the three of us are all podcasting together, I drive a little bit more of what are our talking points going to be,
Yeah.
just the points, right? And then we do a jazz improvisation on the basis of those talking points. But I have a feeling will be some week when I'm not here and the two NPs take it. They'll probably just push record and they'll know what they're going to talk about as they're talking about it, and you guys would be fine with that. So you'd lead off and Amir would chime in, and so, and to that point too about power, I tend to have more of a plan, trying to go into situations, but then I'm prepared to vary from it as new data becomes available. You know, yeah. So yeah, so we're going to go into organizations of self,
Yeah.
which is this really new construct in psychology. You will not have read about it unless you've taken training with us because, well, we discovered it. And we'll be writing about it in some of the books to come. What is this and how does it relate to power? It fundamentally relates to power. Oh my God, it is so much about power. It's crazy. But what is this idea? It's a mouthful. Organizations of self, and I don't think anybody's going to give us an award for naming conventions. I don't think nomenclature is a strong point of ours. But um, uh, so I said at the outset of today, it's the space between personality and temperament and culture. So um, that's the idea is that culture shapes behavior. Absolutely. If we know the group culture or the culture of the a particular society or ethnicity or something like that, we observe it and then we decide how we're going to participate with that culture, whether we're going to conform or whether we're not going to conform. All of that, we basically come up with how do I want to show up with this one person, because two people will create a culture over time. Or, I'm traveling to another part of the world and I have never experienced this culture before. So how does Ted, the Canadian guy, show up in, this culture that's foreign to him? And, probably not dressed like them, that sort of thing. So culture shapes behavior, personality very much shapes behavior. The two are, but there's that. What is that space in between? It is what we call organization of self, where Adrian decides how he wants to show up at a given place and time.
Hmm.
Ted does the same, and then we go to a different place and time, and we're a different version of us that we're expressing. So let's walk it through. You wake up in the morning and you're in this groggy kind of physiological state. The sleep is starting to dissipate. You're trying to wake up. That is a particular organization of self that is very much dictated by the natural waking up process. But we'll bring something to the table of it because we wake up and go, oh, I'm really excited about the day, or oh, I'm really not. I'm really dreading this day. That will really shape how I show up in what I'm dreading or what I'm excited about. And then there's the people that I'll be interacting with, and how well do I know them, and how am I expecting them to show up through the interactions we're going to have. So you wake up, you're in one particular organization of self, and then you eat breakfast, and if you're sitting around the breakfast table with family, you're a particular version of you with them. um, and so this is more than just mood. Mood plays a role in organizations of self, but it's every organization of self is, if it's developed in a person, and it's practiced, it is a particular activation of a neural network that excludes other organizations of self. And so there's some really, really amazing implications of this. And we can be multiple organizations of self in a day. So I finish the breakfast table, and then I, get my briefcase, and I've been shifting my organization of self as I, put on my business suit for the day, if that's what I'm wearing, or business cash, whatever it is. And that is shaping myself even before I get to the client, right? That the dress that I'm putting on is to be appropriate to the what I'm doing with that particular organization or team. And so the organization of self doesn't necessarily start at the moment of interaction with that person, team, group, society, whatever it's there's some preparatory work that goes into that. And then I may deliberately shape my organization of self that I'm going into by my choice of music as I commute to and okay, this kind of music is going to be pumped up for this, or this music's going to kind of calm me down because I'm going into a tense situation. Or sometimes I want no music, I want silence. And that's again to bring forward and activate a particular expression of Ted that I believe is going to be appropriate to that space and time. And I'll go back to that example I had earlier where I walked in to do type training, and I was, typing is usually really fun and lighthearted, but it's deep and penetrating, but it's people tend to gravitate towards it quite readily, and I was not getting that traction. And I went immediately into a different organization of self that said, I am not going to try to impose on these people this agenda when this is clearly not what their brains are at. And I sat there with them through that. We left about mid-morning. We did not bill for that particular situation. We came back, several weeks later and did type training, but it was not the right time and place. And so my organization of self changed from presenter on type theory to sitting there with some folks who were grieving, a great loss. Um, yeah, chime in on organizations of self. What am I not talking about here, Adrian?
No, I mean, you nailed it. Another just example I can think of is when I go to two different friends' houses, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when I go to my friend Phil's house, for example, we went there last weekend. I showed up, I knocked on the door, and I had a side dish with me, right? If I go over to my friend Shane's house, I don't knock on the door. I walk right in with no side dish, with nothing actually, and I just plop on the couch regardless of what he's doing, right? Now, both of these people, I adore them. I adore them so much, but it's just a different organization of self, right? Like at Phil's house, this is what we do when we show up. We all kind of bring food, right? We all kind of and at Shane's house, Shane and I really don't plan much. we just kind of go like, coming over, yeah, sure, and then we do music, play Zelda, like whatever we're gonna do.
And he's P2.
He is P, yeah,
Yep.
NFP.
Yep.
And even the different roles in jobs, right? Like when I was teaching and then working with the practice, right? Like my teaching organization of self, I had to be more J.
Mm-hmm.
I also actually I had to be more S as well in a lot of ways. There was just a lot of like, I mean, anyone who teaches knows this. So you got your syllabuses, you got your learning
It's your curriculum that you got to hit. Yeah.
COs or whatever they're called, and you got the right, like you have all this stuff, right? Like grading criteria is like all this really structured good stuff that you need, right, to educate. But like, and then here we'll run into some problem that we like, is unique because of X, Y, and Z. And then me and Ted will kind of sit there and be like, all right, how do you want to go about this? Right? Like sometimes there's no procedure. It's like we kind of
You
create,
have to surf it.
right? Like
Yeah.
so yeah. So, and then of course there's the organizations of self, like, with different family members or with different, like I know right now, when I have kids, obviously I'm going to love them both to death, but like I just based on how I am with my niece and nephew, like I'm different with them, right?
Yeah.
With, I mean, Vinny's only 6 months old, but like, I already kind of talk different to him. I'm like, hey, big man, hey, little like little buddy, right? Like, and then with Nina, I'm all like, cutesy names and just
Mm-hmm.
yeah, right. It's just a little different, and I know I'm gonna be different in that way, right?
Yep.
And it's kind of I'm different with like my mom than I am with my dad, or I'm different with my sister than I am with my mom. Like it's just these
Yep.
different things, right? Because like my mom, and like since she's a listener, my mom's INFP, so me and her are almost the same type, except she's introverted. And we just have this very common understanding when we talk. Like we don't really have to explain much to each other. Like she'll just explain how she feels about a situation. Like, she'll be telling me a story from work or something, right? And she'll just like explain a situation. I can kind of like finish what she was gonna say for her, right? Like it's like you're feeling like this, and that because of this reason. And so yeah, right. And then like same thing with me, right? Like I'll be telling her something, and then she can, right? And that's just kind of like our thing. But then like me and my sister, for example, it's kind of like we go like we're more sporadic. Like we kind
Yeah.
of go back and forth more. We kind of throw jokes in between. We like right. We playfully insult each other in between. Like it's our conversations are kind of chaotic, right? Like it's just it's half you know talking about stuff, half joking, half making terrible dark jokes we shouldn't make, like just different communication styles and humor as well, right? Like your humor can change from organizations of self. My Dungeons and Dragons group, like we are constantly quoting video games, quoting nerdy movies, quoting Lord of the Rings, quoting whatever, right? And then when I go out with my musician friends to like a metal show or something, like I'm not quoting Lord of the Rings. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm asking if like, they've listened to the new Slaughter to Prevail album and like stuff
Hmm.
like that, right? So it's like, different parts of yourself kind of go into different settings with different people. And it's really, really cool because it just shows how diverse we are as people, as individuals.
Yeah, we're
Right?
adaptable to the different dynamics that we
Yeah.
choose to negotiate.
Like to the point of Ted was my professor, right? And like, there was a point where I was, emailing him like, "Oh, Dr. Vokes, good to see you. I would like to come meet with you on your office hours if you are available at this time." Like just very, and now I'm telling the guy he embraces his penis. Like it's just
Well,
complete
it's
change, right?
from one day to another, right? Just
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because I think I've already talked about this, but like, when you first hired me, like one of the ways that you made your point of like the organizations of self is going to change for both of us is you said like the teacher student thing is done.
yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
that's the exact words that you said to me, right?
yeah.
And
We're working together now.
it's like we're colleagues now, so
Yep,
no more
absolutely.
Dr. Vokes. I'm Ted.
Yep.
Right. And yeah, so except my mom calls you Dr. Ted, which
Wow.
I still think is hilarious. But
I I just want to say that I have a mom who is amazing, and I had a dad who is amazing. But I would wish upon the world that everybody would have your mom as their mom,
oh,
because she's just that kind of mom, right?
she's gonna
And
cry when she hears that.
well, she deserves it. And yeah, and or you deserve my mom, because she's fantastic. She's amazing. Um, yeah, so we both looked in on the mom side of the
Yeah,
equation for sure.
absolutely. Actually, my
Yeah.
mom said like the sweetest thing the other. She didn't even mean to. Like she just said she's been listening to the podcast like all the time instead of music when she's going to work. And then I'm like, "Oh, why?" And she's like, "Cause it feels like I'm having a conversation with you." And I'm like, "Well, that's
Aw,
actually so sweet." Like you
aw.
yeah, well, okay, yeah, here's another point to organization of self, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was in that woman's house for for decades. You know what I mean? Like
So she kicked your ass to the curb. No, that
no,
didn't happen.
no,
That
I
did not
yeah.
happen. That
And
didn't happen.
when I was leaving, she didn't want me to leave, right? Like
No,
kind of a
no.
natural,
Mhm.
mom's mom thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, and like even just the organization itself has now changed, right? Like we don't see each other every day. And when I see her, I'll sometimes be like, "Oh yeah, like this thing happened a week and a half ago that I wanted to tell you about," right? Like it's just like a different thing, or yeah, like it's just different, right? It changes when you
Mhm.
move away from your parents or you move away from your friends. My friend Michael, he's in town right now, one of my best friends, who
Yeah.
actually Ted, we were
Used
both
to
in
be
Penn
with
State.
us. Yeah, used to be with our team. He's
And
amazing.
yeah, like he's been back in town, and it's just so funny because I actually haven't seen the guy in 2 years. Like
Mhm.
I was the best man in his wedding, and like he just lived so far away that we talked every week, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and then like he's here in my house, and it's like we're sitting on the couch playing video games, shooting this shit, and it's like nothing has changed, right? It's like the
Right.
same organization of self when we were studying together, however many years ago, right?
Yeah.
It was like a bringing back an organization of self as well. So
Well, that's it, right? When people say it feels like no time has elapsed
uh,
between us, right?
I love the story that you tell about your colonel. I don't know my military. The it's a really good story that you have where you there's some leader that you've had, and then your organization itself, like even if he's just being casual, you say like yes sir right away.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's a great.
yeah. Major Bob Beck, and I served under Colonel Don Beatty too, two extraordinary human beings, and yeah, I talk about how you know the well, and sadly Bob passed recently, but Don Beatty, if they were to call me up today, I'm not in the military and they're retired, and they could say, hey Ted, I need you to do this, and I'd be right away, sir. You know, and I don't have to call them sir, but when I do interact with them, both all of us outside of the military, my first inclination, and I do, sir, and then they would get down to Bob or Don after that, but sir, because that's that organization itself, that deep, deep respect, that power that I am, the referent power that has lasted past our military service. So they don't have legitimate power over me, but I give them tons of referent power, and if they asked, I'd do it, right? So I'm even proud to say their names,
Yeah.
and put it out because they're just incredible human beings, who the world is better for having them in. So yeah, that's thanks for that story or for prompting me to do that. So
Yeah.
that's an organization of self
I love
where
that story.
you know um, yeah, and there's an addendum to that because there's people that I got to work with and maybe trained and who stayed in the military, and I'll see them at a social event or something like that, and they now technically outrank me. Now I'm out, but somebody who used to be my 2IC as a lieutenant is now a major, and I left at captain to do my PhD. So um, it's the power has shifted, but the it's interesting when there's a major who's relating to me like he's still my second in command, but technically he's already a rank beyond what what I was when I was, you know, his OIC, his officer in command. So um, that's all that neural networks that have been built up, and they evolve, right? I like to use the example too of how um, I always felt like I was like I'd mastered the art and science of being the dad that my 5-year-old was. Uh, but then I realized just as I was reaching that mastery of parenting this particular 5-year-old, he was 6. And I had to adjust, he doesn't need this anymore. He needs that now, right? And so parenting is and leadership is evolving your organization of self in relation to your child and what they need at different times, or your team members. Let's say you've got a nice intact team and it stays together for a while. Well, what they needed from their leader in the early days of team formation is going to be very different than what they needed. We have a team that has been together for 20 years. It's been turnover of one person in a team of 20, and it was a power plant, and they all came to this particular um, uh, municipality when the power plant was built, and they were all from different points, and they all bonded, and then it's 20 years later, and only one person is left, and they're still tight, but the leadership of that power plant looks very different today than when it did 20 years ago, when they all came together. So we are evolving our organizations. So we're doing that with our parents too, you know. Um,
Hmm.
and back to power, okay, so my parents will always be my parents. But their power in relation to me has changed over time, and my power in relation to them has changed over time. And so we say in training, if you have children or you plan to have children, treat them well because they will at one point be the ones that determine what seniors residence you go into, right? And the power will have shifted. So Yeah, that's the power. So, our organizations of self. Let's say it clearly. Organizations of self are actually patterns of how I will be inclined to use and not use those 12 forms of power in the context of, you know, me and Adrian getting together and talking, psychological theory. The the way that I'm using power there, even though I might be talking about the same theory as if I walked into a classroom and talked about the same theory, I'd be a completely different version of me talking to my undergrad class on that theory than I will be being, Adrian's friend and colleague. But we're still talking about the same theory, but it's a completely different organization of self, a completely different power dynamic. Undergrad class, I would love to go into classes and say, "Hey, I'm Ted. This is psychology. Let's learn some psychology together." I know better. You can't do that. If I
Mm.
get 200, intro psych students, they won't feel comfortable if I let the power distance down too much because they may feel, well, what if somebody, snipes at me or I say something in class and somebody laughs or scoffs at me? Do I feel psychologically safe in this classroom? So I keep the doctor thing there. I am Dr. Ted Boaks. This is psychology. This is what we're going to do. Let's go at it. And I keep the power distance up. I use legitimate power. Trying to bring expert power to the table. Information power goes hand in hand with that in this case, but I also want to establish a rapport with the class, and so I want some referent power there too, some positive referent power. So I'm using all of those. But when you and I are just going to sit down and talk about, well, organizations of self, just like I taught in a class, the legitimate stuff falls away. It's your expertise, my expertise, our mutual referent power with each other. That's really, I think, all we're surfing on. And maybe some information power. Oh, I read this article that contributes to this. Oh, cool. Okay, and then we process that together, right? So same theory, different versions of each of us. And you go off to the college and you teach the same theory, and you're going to be as you described. Um,
Hmm.
so, and when I've taught graduate classes, I drop the power distance considerably. I don't give it all away, but grad students, once they get to know you, that you filter up to first name basis, um, and you know, uh, usually I had some profs in grad school where I never got to the point of calling them by their first name, but um, they just how they set up, how they organize. There was this brilliant prof I had, Dr. Henry Minton, and we would all call him Henry, but to his face and in his class, it was Dr. Minton. And it wasn't because he demanded it. It was because we had such reverence for his mind.
Mm.
He was just, and people would talk about it, oh, who's teaching that? Oh, Henry's teaching that, oh, it's a Henry class, I was like, whoa, be prepared to have your mind expanded. And I had great profs in addition to Henry, but no, I never said to Henry, well, Henry, what do you think about that, Dr. Minton? You know, um, but it was out of that respect, and so yeah. So yes, each organization of self. Oh yes, we didn't bring this in. Um, so I go camping. Trent and we go camping, and we go into the woods pretty deep. We rough it. We're intense. Yeah, we have air mattresses, but and when I go into the woods, I bring more of my former military organizations of self with me. They become me. I'm not Captain Folks at all, but I'm using a knowledge base that I developed from the military when we go camping. And I almost completely forget about Dr. Volk's organizations of self when I'm in the woods. I don't need that, right? So organizations of self actually, as we said, they're neural networks, activate certain knowledge bases while you're in it. And if suddenly you had to be another version of you, another organization of self, while you're still in the previous one, you can have a great deal of difficulty shifting between the two. And my favorite example of this is the first time I took Trent camping. He was like 3.5 or something like that. I wanted to start him early, and he was all pumped up to go camping. You know, he was like, "Oh, this is gonna be great." And then I got a call from the dean of the business school and said, could you? I was teaching in their weekend MBA program, which was really fun to do. But he said, we're launching it, and would you come out and do a half day, orientation during the orientation week? So they're doing that in late August, and that's when we're going camping. And I said, well, sure, but I'm actually going camping. And he said, well, look, come do the morning, and then you can carry on and go camping. And we worked that out. So the thing was, single dad, and so my mom had to take care of Trent for that morning. And this was out of town. This is when we were running the MBA program in Kitchener-Waterloo up from Windsor. So, and that was en route to the camping area anyway. So that was cool. But my mom took Trent for the morning. And then I said, come at this time, and then I'll be finished, and I'll take you home on the route up to the campground, and Trent, I'll go camping. And but she brought Trent about half an hour early. So I'm still doing type theory with this group of 35 MBA students, and so I'm in my Professor Vokes, and I haven't got, I've had the morning with them, so I've established some routine. Hopefully, I've and we're laughing, so I'm thinking there's positive referent power. They're obviously listening to me. They're giving me expert power. I'm comfortable doing those things. They're anxious because they're starting an MBA program, and it's all done on weekends or for working professionals, so they're well, what am I getting myself into? The dean and I were trying to calm them down, but not minimize how much work there's going to be there. I'm wrapping up. I'm probably doing the JP dimension by now. Adrian knows the whole script, the whole routine, because we do that last dimension that way. And suddenly they start laughing. There's 35 people all up in the seats in the classroom, and they start laughing, and they're not laughing at anything I said, and they're not even looking at me anymore. And I look in the direction that they're looking. So they're looking to my right, and so I look over, and lo and behold, pressed up against, there's a door, and there's that glass that frames the door, so that if somebody is wanting to see what's on the other side of the door, you can see through it safely. And down low, there's this little 3.5-year-old face pressed against the glass, looking in the classroom, and and he's like, tapping on the glass, and so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've still got half an hour to go, and suddenly the door bursts open, and in runs my son, and he runs right up to me, and he grabs my leg, and he says, come on, Daddy, let's go camping. And everybody just lost it, right? Everybody just lost it. He was adorable. But here I am between two organizations of self. I am Professor Vokes, and then I'm speaking differently to my son, Daddy, right? I mean, I'm to my son, I'm being Daddy. And I go, okay, buddy, we have a little ways to go, but we'll go camping. Don't worry about it. And I'm flipping back and forth with the way I'm speaking in the same space. And so I've got these two organizations of self that are in tension, because I'm needing to be both at once, and it's crazy making at that point. And I'm laughing in an embarrassed, semi-embarrassed kind of way, but I see the humor, and they're laughing uproariously, and they're just wonderful. So it broke them, me, out of our organizations of self. I had to find a way to finish off the dimension and then get the heck out of there to go camping, as he was pulling on my leg. So I bring in the dad brain, and I go, oh, there's an AV cart here, right? This big sturdy AV cart, no TV on it. and just a big cart there ready. And so I said, okay, buddy, and it had wheels on it. So I picked him up and I put him up in the top, and had my hand on him at the time, and he thought this was really cool to be up high and I could move the cart a little bit back and forth with the wheels, right? And so I got through, finished the JP dimension, and then uh, we I was able to go into my dad version of me, wave goodbye to them all and say, I'll see you in a few weeks. And so that whole experience of being pulled between two organizations of self it can be comical in this case. It can be devastating in other ones, right?
Mhm.
Uh, where you have to be one, but you're drawn into another. So I remember dealing with a leader who, it was a really awful situation that company was dealing with, and it was very solemn, and he had to say a lot of bad news to a team, and it was really important that he do this at this time, and he gets a phone call and he finds out that his parent just passed away. So, um, and he's the CEO, right? Um, so he's got two horrible organizations of self that he has to bring for. Well, he has to bring forward the CEO one, and then he's got to go and be the human being who's grieving the loss of a parent. Um, that was a difficult. I happened to be on site because of for the it was a very difficult um, situation, and he conducted it with dignity and whatnot. But that would not be a fun pull between those two. The grieving self, the very responsible CEO self. That'd be tough. That'd be really tough. So different neural networks, different knowledge bases that we tap into, and let's bring it home again, different power strategies, different configurations of how I use power in those two different organizations of self. um, and um, and then when the class ended, I had to go out there and say, Mom, what were you thinking to bring him half an hour early? You think a 3.5-year-old, you're going to tell the 3.5-year-old where daddy is and who's going to take you camping shortly, and he's going to sit there for, anyway, we laughed about it. She's
Mhm.
wonderful.
That's a good story too.
Yeah, I remember the push and pull, even though it was comical. And even like we use language differently in different organizations of self. We absolutely do. I, uh, yeah, we really do. For instance, I was different with my dad than I was different with my mom, and different with the two of them together. You point that out. But if he and I were out in the garage working on something, we'd we'd swear. We wouldn't swear at each other. But we'd you hit your thumb with a hammer. You might drop an F bomb, and no big deal. Um, but then mom would say, do you guys want some lunch? I got lunch on, and we go in. Suddenly, no more swearing, right? No, no, no. I've only heard my mom ever swear once in her life, and um, so no swearing, and we weren't punished for swearing. We just knew that wasn't that wasn't cool around mom. So and then we go back out after lunch, and the swearing would start again. So we have these very different ways of showing up. There really are different neural networks in the brain for each organization of self. And then we've left out, I've never been in a situation like this before. I don't know how I want to show up right now, right? Like what do I do? I got to create a version of me because I've never done this before, right? Do you have any spur of the moment organizations of self, Adrian, you had to create? Any recollections of those? Because you've done it. I have done it. We've all done it. But do you have any?
I know that you have a really good one, but
Oh, are you gonna
we're
make me
at
tell that one?
we're at we're almost at 70 minutes, so I wonder if we should save
Oh, okay.
for
Well,
the next
okay.
one.
Well, we'll pick up on this to tie it together. I think because it's organization itself is in our view is one of the revolutions in psychology, and it relates directly to power. It's more than that, but it's everything to do with power too. Um, so yeah, we'll go that way next time, and I think we should do a tip of the hat to your mom and my mom and the producer of this podcast, Trent, for
being our
them being.
being our targets of storytelling today.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And Michael and
Yeah,
Shane. Oh boy, we gotta roll a list of
yeah,
credits on on this going
yeah,
forward. Um, Yeah, so thanks to our listeners. Thanks for your questions that I was addressing last episode, and please keep them coming in because we're going to do more Q&A sessions. It won't necessarily just be me, but we'll be doing that. And you got any questions about all things industrial organizational psychology? Well, if you got human beings in the workplace, we got the psychology for that. So you can check us out at volksleadershipgroup.com. And you'll also find a page where you can find the podcast on 4 different platforms. You just click there and it'll take you directly to that. And yeah, I look forward to seeing everybody next time. What do you got to wrap up with, Adrian?
yeah. So, well said. Um, when the sun sets in the west and the good looking men are striving in the north, and I don't know what to say. I don't
You
know.
don't know where you're going. You're
I don't
tired
know
now.
where I'm
You just
going, but all I
yeah.
know is that we have today. And yeah, this is Volks Leadership Group, and you're listening to the Social Power Lab,
Yeah,
and we will see you next time.
that was very P of you, Adrian. I just want to say, very P of
Very,
you.
very P.
Thank you for listening to the Social Power Lab podcast. Make sure you join us next week as we continue to uncover the hidden dynamics of social power all around us, because every conversation changes the world one interaction at a time. You can listen to the Social Power Lab podcast on YouTube under Social Power Lab _VLG, on Spotify under Social Power Lab, on Substack under Social Power Lab, and on Apple Podcast under Social Power Lab. Thank you and have a wonderful day. This podcast was produced by Trenton Vokes. The theme was produced and written by Adrian Deschamps.